has made you accept having it? Building confidence, finding a community of others that share your experience, social media, public figures, all of that goodness. So what has made you accept it?
I think that I've come to accept that acceptance is a part of the emotional cycle of having it. So I will accept it, and then something will happen, and I'm like, I haven't accepted it. So because I think one thing that having a chronic um I'm saying disease on purpose, like there's a whole debate about it in the vitiligo community, but having a chronic disease that's visual
Mhm.
keeps you in a state of perpetual growth, in the sense that I don't there are people that they're not challenged to grow just by virtue of being human and where they are in the world. And so it's not anything, it's not a negative statement, but it's just like they've been who they've been as long as they've been that person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing in there making you, challenging you to think different or see things different. Well, vitiligo is constantly doing that for me and to me in that sense. And so every one of those things, I would call them wellness tools I use. The biggest one was the vitiligo community reaching out. 2013 really helped because for the first time, um, I chose to, in a sense, face my fears and go meet uh, people who looked like me, and ended up it was the medicine that I needed. It's just the sense of no, community and normalization of, I move through the world this way. Do you move through the world this way? Do we experience similar types of social interactions? What do they do at, how do people look at you at work?
Mm.
Okay, because I'm like, and do you feel like you've missed out on promotions? Because, because there's just the experiences and what is it called? Gaslighting. So there's a lot in the workplace. I've experienced a lot of gaslighting and social gaslighting, and it's annoying and it happens everywhere, but it really lines on like, you don't fit into our culture, and it's like, ooh, what do you mean by that? And it doesn't matter what pigmentation the person has. If somebody, like, that's the other part, if somebody is uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable. And so you just never know where it's coming from. And so being in that, it reminds me, there's a ride called like Kamikaze, and it like takes you it shakes you, and like you go all these different directions. I think that's what Kamikaze actually means. But anyway, it's so it has a wild ride. It can have a wild ride effect. Right now I'm in a pattern, and there are places that I frequent, and so I'm used to how things are in those spaces. But as soon as I have to go to a new place, then it's like, oh, okay, so we're going somewhere new today. So we need to pep talk it up. And the I guess the public figures off the top of my head would be um Winnie Harlow. Her campaign that she did with H&M after her ATM, America's ANTM, America's Next Top Model exposure was very helpful for me personally in my career, because um diversity, equity, and inclusion, whew, is a mixed bag because the companies mean well, but some things are never going to be, some spaces are never going to be safe spaces for everyone. And that's sad to say that. But I would say having community, once I had a community to start bouncing things off of, it helped navigating certain things easier because it's like, oh, hey, that deep darkness of the soul, that loneliness that I talk about, um now I just have friends in it, and it's like, no, yeah, that happens. And yeah, because it's like the promotions, like they're like, yeah, no, I've applied and you never hear back. And I was like, okay, so there can be some um issues that arise with just being different. And um I'm learning to accept that and keep navigating life. But so the public figures are definitely Michael Jackson as well. Um, Also, there is a anchor man, and I have his book, Lee Thomas, who is a vitiligo man. And those are the three off the top of my head. But I have a lot of friends that are models, a whole lot, and or social media influencers in that vein. So that's always helpful. And in fact, we had this debate recently in our community because Jamie Foxx was in a movie where he portrayed a vitiligo person, and some of us feel a different kind of way about it.
I saw
and
that.
so, but it's good to have that dialogue because, it comes up as several different things, and I've had to keep reprocessing it myself because first it's not always delight, and it borderlines for me blackface in some regards, and then at the same time, though, um I appreciate the normalization. And so also in the movie Deadpool, um, the character Domino, who I wish I could remember the name of the actress, but she had a vitiligo patch around her eye in that movie. And I didn't know that it was cosmetic till I saw her in another movie. And then I had to process it because I'm like, is it cosmetic or did she just cover her vitiligo for this other movie? And so, because it's, and the thing was, I have a bias. I'm like, if she's a vitiligo person and she covered her vitiligo for this other movie, a Shay, like it doesn't bother me. But the other way does. And I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? And I think it really comes to bear record with Hollywood, and Hollywood having this free access to other people's ways of knowing and ways of being. And we've seen actors portray different diseases, be in wheelchairs, but they don't have those conditions. And it's like, are we taking advantage of the people that have these conditions? Are we giving money to the charities that are supporting these people in real life? Or are we going to keep looking for interesting stories because you're an artist? Because I've ran into that too. People will paint pictures of me and stuff without my permission and then want me to be impressed. And it's like, okay, so I have to process this because I didn't know you were going to steal my face. And my background is in a fine arts. It's in fashion merchandising. So I'm also a critic in that sense. Like I'm coming from an expert art perspective where it's just like, okay, so you used a model for this, but you didn't use a vitiligo person, but you gave the person that you painted vitiligo because you think it's interesting. That's what you're telling me. And it's like, process it. Because you want people to care and know, and then at the same time, they press buttons, and it's like you can't have it both ways. And so it's like be invested in having the dialogue, be invested in coaching and educating and affirming everyone's full humanity, because that's what it comes back to. It if you're doing something in the spirit of wellness and health, then Ashay. And that's the hard part, because there are people that are going to there's always going to be parasites, in the situations, and people that are trying to exploit people's insecurities. So I want to finish the answer. What were the other things that it
Just giving examples, building confidence, finding the community. You said that they contacted you for the conference. How did they contact you? How did they know to contact you?
I believe it was through Facebook. I don't think any other I'm not really big on any other site, even though I have things up sometimes by accident. So I think it was on Facebook. I think originally it was a Facebook group that I had joined, and it happened to I feel like the people that were looking to find somebody finally found the group where people wanted to find somebody, because everybody with vitiligo is not a part of the vitiligo community, even though we welcome them. We're not going to, everyone isn't necessarily engaged. Everyone doesn't want to be engaged. And that's all well and good. In fact, I had an instance the other day, not the other day, it was like a month or two ago, in April, where I saw a man with universal vitiligo, and I knew it right away, because it's just I can tell the difference between vitiligo and albinism. I just can't, because there's the brain works like a certain way. But I didn't bring it up, and but he did something when he was a guard, and he did something when I was leaving the building intentionally to get my attention. So I was like, okay, so I guess he does want to talk. So we got in a conversation, and he's not really interested in like going online or joining groups or anything, but I always encourage people to and or to come to one of the conferences, because it can be for like, even for myself, it's been life changing. I went to one I didn't go last year. I didn't go this year. I won't be able to go this year. Hopefully next year I'll be able to go. But in Indianapolis, and it was like, because of COVID, we didn't get to have one for several years. And I realized how much that is like a recharging space, because I get to go see the friends that I've met online that I've been talking to for years. I finally get to see them face to face, and we get to share our crazy stories and our shady side. Because I like to say that every interaction I'm a perfect human being, but that's not true. Oh, I never intentionally scare someone.
You silly.
Some nosy little kids.
Oh, don't scare the babies. You can't scare the babies.
No, but it's just the reality of being human in those senses. Like, yeah, every day. And I had to learn that, actually. There was a time when I was too acquiescing and too sharing too much, and I had to learn where I need that boundary to be for myself to feel safe, and not looking for validation from the outside. And so that's also a continual work in progress. So I think community is definitely one. Advocacy, as well, educating, and then I think where I'm at now is um well, I'm in the middle of creating a platform to do like speaking engagements and stuff. So that's why this interview is actually very important to me. And
I was the first
it's like, okay, yeah,
one.
I'm like, I just started moving in that direction again. I think I've just gone through a season, another dark loneliness, dark soul. Those they're always it's always a learning thing is what I come to. And because I'm a spiritual person, I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, okay, what's the lesson? Just let's just skip. Feelings is hurt. I'm sad.
Yeah.
What are we learning? Like,
Get the pity party.
what are we doing here? Who am I talking to? Who am I praying? Is the Orisha? What's going on? Like God, Jesus, Buddha, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? What am I learning about humanity? Okay. Because that's the lens that um has taken shape for me. It's just this sense of being able to hold space for humanity. And it sounds like weird or like, don't we all do that? And it's like, not in the sense of everything that we do because we're human beings. And that's basically my thing. It's like when people are being kind and they're accepting and it's a empathetic environment. They're being human beings just like the people who aren't kind. It's not an empathetic environment. And I actually learned to have empathy for the spaces that cannot extend to me the same empathy because I've had to learn and accept, wow, they just don't have it to extend. And so I have to go somewhere else because that's what's best for me. And that's perfectly okay. And I don't have to shade somebody else for learning, for being in a state of learning or at a different state of place of learning in their humanness. So I think that's it. I've come to center my full humanity in that sense. Because of having been at LIGO and it challenging me in so many different ways. And like I had this moment when I was in a course and they brought up the indigenous schools that First Nation children were like stolen and like put in these schools to de Indianize them. And it really made me think about my ancestors that are indigenous and really like, okay, so when you talk about the loneliness, sometimes it's the invisibility of who you are in the dominant culture. And it's just like because these things aren't widely known because it takes away from power structures, you know. And so that loneliness is like, oh wow, it's like, well, if I don't recognize my own ancestors, then why would I expect someone else to do so? You know, and so it was like, okay, thanks, Vitiligo. I wouldn't be thinking of it in this way or on that level, but it was just like I could feel the loneliness, but it was like, yeah, because this is an aspect of yourself that you've known about since you're about 8, but you haven't invested any time or effort in knowing more. And so I had to start investing the time and the effort of knowing more and growing that identity and cultural awareness for myself. And that's helped me become more grounded and confident in myself. And that resonates with my vitiligo as well, because for me it's an everyday thing. And I do have to remind myself that for me it's every day. When I go on Facebook, I see a whole bunch of vitiligo people. I see a whole bunch of albino people. Like, that's my world. That's not everybody's world. And that's okay. It makes sense for your world to reflect you. Um, and so it's like, okay, so I go visit. It's like, let me go visit. See what other folks is doing. Because also the algorithms will keep you in a bubble. So fight your algorithms. Go dig up friends that you haven't seen. Usually done that. Like, I was like, let me delete all this stuff and just go on my friends list, start saying hi to people, just cause to get the algorithm to be a bit more balanced.
Yeah.
So yeah, the social media groups, and I think even though I'm going through a rough patch with my own family, and I've had to make executive decisions, I do also believe that family is one of the um, helps. For me, it's been um, in the sense of a Africana perspective of connecting with my ancestors through spirit. Um, but there was a moment in my life I was just done with alive people. And so I'm like, you know what? Alive people suck. So I'm gonna
I thought you said a lot of people. You said alive people.
yeah, not a lot of people, alive people. I'm just like, I'm just done with all these people who are alive. Like,
Oh God.
they just don't get it. And
Wow.
so that's when I started learning more about ancestral altars and ancestral veneration, for my own self growth and knowledge, but also just as a wellness tool, because it's like, okay, I'm seeing things, and that's the other aspect of being um I think authentic, your authentic self. It's like, okay, because I'm seeing and feeling things, and I also know that I'm from cultures that had different ways of understanding their bodies, their connection to nature. And so me learning those more about those ways also helps me learn more about myself. And so the vitiligo ends up becoming just a aspect of my humanity, and one of the tools that has led me to be more accepting of my own differences. And one of the things that, because I live in the space of understanding that people don't walk through the world the same way that I do, and everyone doesn't live in that understanding. And so, and I know it because I run into people and I'm like, okay, these are people who, every character on TV looks like them, so they don't understand. And that's okay. And these are people who every character on TV doesn't look like them, and they just want to fit in. And even when somebody gives them a little space, they think it's great. And I'm just like, I'm not going to say anything about that. Because I also understand some representation is better than no representation.
Yeah.
But so just being connected to authentic cultures that really represent who I am, how I identify, helps, because the physical aspects of myself are also very stereotypical. So there's that aspect that I navigate as well. Because everybody who's indigenous doesn't, there are deeply melanated people who are indigenous, and we don't think of Native Americans in that light because of how they've been presented through propaganda for the country that we live in. So so it's these things, and even on Eurasia, the continent, like, there are deeply melanated Asian people, like, and we don't think of them in that way because of they're trying to fit a certain construct in order to maintain a certain space in a certain world system. So it's real stuff, and it affects vitiligo people, especially the caste system in India. I have vitiligo friends who marry other vitiligo people because that culture practices a lot of arranged marriages, and so, but it brings up the conversation about genetics in vitiligo because vitiligo isn't necessarily a genetic disease, meaning anybody can technically develop it in the sense that no one in your family has to have it for you to get it, for it to develop in you. But it can happen through families as well. And so when vitiligo people decide to be a couple, then it's like, okay, that's cool. So people will be stupid and like, so are their kids gonna have spots? And it's just like this is not gonna stop. And so that's where I'm at now because I'm trying to get out there and um see if I will ever have kids or life partner or whatever. And it's just like the crazy aspects of things. Like, okay, so I'm gonna have to deal with this through pregnancy, through raising kids, and it's like, okay, this is what it is. So I still have stuff to do. I have a lot of tools, and I'm grateful for everything that you brought up. And I will also be using those tools to navigate the future as well, because it's interesting. I think that I've learned to stay curious because I just don't know what's next. But yeah, it stays. I'm laughing because I'm thinking like there are moments I finally clicked, and then everything goes completely off, the social road. Like, okay, I thought we were communicating, and now I know we weren't communicating at all. So, because people want to have a sense of power and authority in a space, and so it's just like, and when you are more inclusive in the diversity and equity and inclusiveness spaces, it's weird. I can't be more inclusive than the people that are being inclusive. I over inclusive. Oh, like telling everybody that everybody's the same race. My bad. So, but yeah, but it's interesting because there are social limitations that exist that I don't I've I've forgotten about because I'm like ice skating over things where it's less like um in a sense where um I'm not worried about how other people will perceive me as much. Now I'm more concerned with how to navigate those things in a way that doesn't disturb the life that I'm building for myself, because that's I've become aware of that. It's like, okay, I had to learn how to navigate, like, for instance, I gave the example of in 2013 when my space was more universal, and I have different interactions with people um when my face is universal versus when it's like it is now with more vulgaris. And it's funny because I can have different interactions with the same people, and they might not be aware of the change in interaction, and I have to learn to adjust to that, because it's like, okay, it's not so much that it's a right or wrong thing that they're doing. It's just that people have adjustments that they have to make, and some people adjust better than others. And I'm also not no longer seeking outward validation for the vitiligo. I've come to a place of accepting my own expertise through experience, and not letting even like medical professionals, like, just because you know what my genome looks like doesn't mean you
Mhm.
know me. Okay, so back up. And that's a fight that we'll keep having with Western medicine, to empathize it more, because doctors can really, I mean, I don't like that COVID happened at all, but for one thing I really appreciated was how it really took out that Western medicine ego. It was just way too big.
Mhm.
And I was like, I've been telling people, sometimes they just don't have the answers. Sometimes they just don't be knowing, and they don't want to admit that they just don't know. It's like, why is this so hard?
Yeah,
Just, oh, you might
yeah,
have to go ask somebody else, but quit acting like you have some answer for me that you don't have.
yeah,
Like, it's okay.
yeah.
Uh, and so we put I think that pressure to know, to I've kind of let go. The hope of like finding a cure. I think that's like the miracle question people like to ask me sometimes. It's like, well, if they found a cure, would you take it?